I think we're good.
If you need something new, go there.
I think we're good.
It's not
Thank
sharing
you.
your screen or anything. So.
That's fine. I'll share your screen.
And
Okay.
it's using the mic that's here. So
Sweet.
It should be good enough.
Okay. Stan's taking photos. How's everyone doing today?
Good.
Woo! Woo! All right. Thank you guys for coming out. This is our first GD game talk of the year. I'm super excited to have you guys here. Who remembers the one GD game talk we held last year? See a lot of GDSA people who remember. In the back, can I get your name? Steve. If you want to speak up a little bit, what was GD Game Talk last year? What was it as an event? Do you remember?
Last year's about emergent storytelling in RPGs.
That was a topic, but like, what is GD Game Talk? I guess if we only had one of them, it's a bit hard to separate the topic from the event. But
It was like a sort of open forum discussion. It was like a podcast, really, with two guys in the front talking and a lot of audience participation.
absolutely, yeah, it's exactly it.
Everyone did all the GD talks.
Yeah. It's a design talk, right? We're here to talk about our favorite games. We get to talk about aspects that we love about them, aspects that we dislike about, maybe not our favorite games, but games that we maybe don't like as much. And we get to share our ideas about, what makes these games so special. Maybe you're going to, inspire someone to play it. Maybe you're going to inspire someone to design a game that takes inspiration from it. So that's really what GD Game Talk is all about. Hopefully we have a couple more of them this year, maybe a few more than last year. But yeah, we're super excited. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm Haider.
I'm Izzy.
And we're going to be talking this week about what is our topic? Our topic is open world game design. We're going to be looking at the anatomy of an open world. Who here's played a bunch of open world games?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Most people, a couple people who haven't. Do you guys feel that open world games are often very samey? I mean, I guess it depends on the game, right? But I feel like there's a couple games where I'm like, if I jump from this game to this game, different developer, different, franchise entirely. But if I were to go from, A to B to C to D, it all kind of blend together. It all kind of be like the same experience. You guys ever feel like that?
Yeah.
Any examples of games that you felt were like similar and they blended together?
I was playing recently The Crew, the new The Crew game. And to me, it felt a lot like Forza Horizon to a degree where I'm like, I'm doing the same thing as the other game. It's just like slightly different racing mechanics, but the open world feels the same. The mission design felt the same. And it was just like, I don't know, a weird experience.
You get tired of open worlds after like playing a bunch of them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else ever been like, I'm like, I don't want to play fucking open world game. Are you just tired of it? Anyone?
Absolutely.
They get really, I don't know. I get so bored of them so quickly that most games, if they go open world, it's like an immediately just dismissed by me. But there's been some amazing open world games over the past few years, and that have been totally revolutionary. That have been like the best the industry has to offer. Anyone played a amazing revolutionary open world game from the past few years?
Spider-Man.
2017 was the first one, right? Miles Morales is 2020.
I think is Spider-Man 2018 or 17?
Oh, 18, right? Yeah, I think it was 18.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, both of them are similar in this sort. I prefer Spider-Man 1 for mostly everything, but Miles Morales has a much better combat system. I'm really looking forward to the second Spider-Man because based on the teasers they've shown, the trailers they've shown, the combat looks so much better than the first one. So that's going to be absolutely insane. Elden Ring, I've tried playing. It felt decent, but sometimes I get overwhelmed, and that is one of the points I want to bring up later. With Elden Ring, there wasn't any sort of direction at all, and I got too overwhelmed, and I just quit the game, and I never played again.
Yeah, those are two definitely like great examples of some of the most popular open world games over the past couple of years. There's been a couple more that I'm specifically thinking of right now.
Tears and Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild was just such a breath of fresh air when it arrived. Look, guys, it just came to me. I had to say it. But that game was just so different than anything else that was, around in terms of open world game design. And for a lot of studios, it seemed like it would be a changing point. And then we got games like Elden Ring, and then we got Tears of the Kingdom, which took the, design principles of Breath of the Wild, added way more content. Because I think Breath of the Wild was actually a little bit content light, even though it had a long runtime. But beyond the main story, I don't know if the quests were actually all that good, but I think Tears of the Kingdom was really good on that. But it managed to, really refresh the whole open world genre. I could play a million games like Breath of the Wild if, there's enough content to go around. But yeah, Elden Ring was one that you mentioned. Spider-Man. Any other like really good open world games that you guys enjoyed recently?
This is going to be controversial, but Genshin.
Genshin.
Because like I don't play Genshin anymore, but like the open world in Genshin, it's really satisfying to play in because it feels as if it's alive, but not in the sense that games like Red Dead 2 or GTA feel alive, where there's a lot of NPCs. But the world of Tevat, something like that, has like a lot of just life in it, which is not like real life, quote unquote. But there's a lot of people you can fight and a lot of lore hidden everywhere, which if you go out of your way to find, and if you actually pay attention to what's happening, there's like a whole world building story going on.
Yeah, I've never played Genshin. I'm not actually familiar with any of the design around it, so I don't know what it plays like. I assume it's very similar to the principles of Breath of the Wild.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know visually it's very similar. You still have the same mechanics, but like in terms of actual design of how they design their worlds and that sort of stuff, I don't know myself. But so we do have this board over here. Sometimes we have two boards. Right now we only have one. It's just for framing at this point. If you guys maybe don't want to put your hand up and don't want to engage directly with the conversation, at any point today, come up here and put down some of your favorite games, and we'll probably at some point take a look at the list and start chatting about those games, how their game design works and how they go. But let's actually talk about how these games design their worlds and how we can talk about them. So there's this really great podcast I recommend that you guys check out. It's called Triple Click Podcast. It's by three different games journalists. They're actually some of the best games journalists in the industry, to be honest, because I know we make fun of games journalists a lot. But those guys are all great. And they did an episode on open world games where they came up with this like taxonomy, this way to describe open world games. And this applies to essentially any open world game that you can think of. And it's called EcoTag. It's an acronym. So we're going to go through the three different categories within EcoTag, and we're going to compare games, what works really well within them and what maybe doesn't work so well within them. So the first two for EcoTag, by the way, we should probably spell it out, ECOTAG, right? Just to make sure everyone's on the same page. The first two, EC. So that stands for emergent versus controlled. Do the systems in the game allow for emergent stories to occur? Are the systems allowing for different types of moments that happen as a result of those systems coming together, or is it more controlled, where you have some content that has been created by a designer and has been placed around the world for players to experience? It's a little confusing just if we just describe it like that, but let's take a look at an example of like an emergent game. So GTA is one of the most popular and best known open world games that really relies on emergent systems to create some of its content. The police system in GTA, right, is a fantastic example. Whenever you're playing the game, you can do something stupid and the cops will get called on you and they'll chase you down. And that can happen in all sorts of places in all sorts of ways. And it's not really something that is directly controlled by the player. You can be in the middle of the city and you can get the cops called on you. You can go over to the airport, you can go to gang territory, you can go, up in the middle of nowhere and get the cops called on you and they'll chase you down. And they also scale, right? So you're going to have low-level police officers, and as they go up, they're going to bring out the tanks, they're going to bring out the helicopters, and you're really going to get screwed over. There's so many different possibilities that can emerge from the police system, the traffic system, the pedestrian system in GTA, that there's like unlimited possibility. You can play GTA for the rest of your life, and there's probably always going to be something interesting that you could come up with. And a lot of content creators have actually taken advantage of that. Anyone watch like the Achievement Hunter heist videos back before Rockstar dropped real heists? So in GTA 5, in GTA Online, you could go and do a robbery of a convenience store and the cops would get called on you. And so these guys would get into a multiplayer lobby, they would go rob a convenience store, but they would have this whole elaborate plan of how they were going to escape. They would take a truck and block off an alleyway. And so one guy would, get in the car, drive through the alleyway, and then his buddy would be in the truck and would back it up, block the alleyway, and the cops couldn't get through anymore. And then someone would fly in with a cargo bomb helicopter, pick up the car that they're in, and then fly away with them. Completely overkill. Like, this is a convenience store robbery, right? And they're using helicopters to fly away. But there's so many interesting ways that you can engage with that. And that makes that almost unlimitedly, I can't say this properly, but it gives it so much replay value, and it really rewards your creativity. Now that is opposed to a more controlled open world system. Games like Assassin's Creed, games like Spider-Man. Anyone have? Well, I haven't really explained what control is too much, but it's games where it doesn't really rely on those open systemic systems to create these possibilities. Everything you're kind of doing in the game is more handcrafted. Now, that doesn't mean that the game isn't replayable. It doesn't mean that the game isn't necessarily going to have interesting possibilities, but every single possibility has to be created by a designer, and it doesn't necessarily reward the player's creativity in the same way. So let's talk about examples. Let's talk about emergent games. Let's talk about controlled games. Let's talk about moments or experiences that we've had within those games that you guys think were really interesting.
With Spider-Man in particular, I don't think if it's like, it's not completely emergent, but I don't think it's completely controlled either, because when you're just swinging around having fun, there's a lot of quote unquote random encounters that you can get to. There's different crimes that happen. There's the Sable outposts. So while it's not completely emergent, I think we can't really put it into the category of control.
Yeah, I think there's like little things that do come up, like the police or the car chases that you can do, and those are going to be happening in random directions. It's not always controlled by the game systems. So obviously there's going to be a mix in most games, right? GTA even is like not a game where everything is emergent. If you look at any of the story missions, those are all very much on rails, to the dismay of a lot of players. I couldn't get into Red Dead because everything was so on rails. But the open world part of Red Dead was my favorite part. I actually really enjoy the open world in Red Dead, but I can't play the campaign. It sucks for me. But yeah. Anyone else have any examples of controlled?
Oh, control.
Or controlled or emergent? I was gonna keep going, but yeah, go for it.
Valheim, honestly. Like, I think for what it is, it's a $20 game, something like that. It goes on sale regularly for like $5, and it's like low quality open world survival.
Yeah.
And I haven't found anything that is controlled. Most of it is emergent. Like you can, well, I guess there's certain places things can spawn when you generate the world. It generates a random like world for you. So every time you start the game, it's completely different.
Yeah.
But like, if you find a troll cave, chances are there'll be a troll inside of it. You can also find them just kind of wandering around and things like that.
Yeah. I don't know how anything of Minecraft. Right? Minecraft, I mean, it's not a traditional open world game. It's like an unlimited world game. It's a game where you can move in any direction for as long as you want, and you'll never really come up against a boundary. I don't think anymore. There's the not in any human lifespan, right? But yeah, like those types of games, there's basically no limit on player creativity. You can do all sorts of stuff, and players have in the past. I mean, like, how many of us grew up watching Minecraft YouTubers?
Yeah.
Right? What was so well? No, it's fine. But what was so special about Minecraft YouTubers? Usually, it was just that they were really creative at coming up, taking the existing game systems and having a lot of fun with them in creative ways, and then putting that on display for you. And you're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I'm gonna do that with my friends. But yeah, that's a fantastic example of a game that's really, I mean, I don't know if I'd say purely dependent on its emergent systems, because there's probably objectives that are designed out in a more linear fashion of like, okay, well, you're going to progress from here to here to here. But, the path to get there is basically purely emergent. So that's a really fantastic example. I need to play more Valheim. I kind of fell off
I would love to play Valheim. So I mean, hey, yeah.
Ooh, how about-
Valheim is entirely based on like who you're playing with.
Yeah.
You can have fun with it on your own, but it's so much more fun with you.
A lot of cool systems.
It's so, and like, it's just, even though it's low quality, it's beautiful. It's really
Oh,
nice
yeah,
to
yeah.
look at.
In a similar way into Minecraft, before we began this session, Spencer and I were talking about it earlier. And how many of you guys have here played Factorio?
Oh, I fucking love Factorio, dude.
So both of us are talking about Factorio, and would you classify Factorio as an open world game? Because it's similar to Minecraft in it that its main goal isn't to be open world. It just happens to be open world because of the features of the game.
Don't put all the genre debate on me. I know I like to go on. Like, this is an RPG, this is an RPG. But what do you guys think? Is Factorio an open world?
You just call it a sandbox game.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Categories just exist to make it easier to understand things. But yeah, sandbox is a really good word for it. But yeah.
I'll bring the open world and the sandbox. There are sandbox games that aren't open worlds. The example are coming to my brain right now. I know they exist though. Like
Tabs, totally accurate battle simulator.
yes,
That's technically
yeah,
sandbox.
very much a sandbox game, very much closed world.
Yeah.
So I would argue open world and sandbox is an important distinction.
Yeah, I guess you can be both. I guess they're not like it's one or the other. You
Yeah.
can be both, or you can have one, or you can be neither. But yeah, and I think like GTA, right? A lot of the cool stuff from GTA comes from its sandbox of those systems interacting. And some of those systems come into play in story missions, and sometimes they decide to be like, okay, we're gonna avoid these systems. We're just gonna focus on a more controlled type of gameplay. But yeah, games can be fluid in that way where they go between different types of design. Any other examples of like games that you guys really enjoyed that have either controlled or really emergent gameplay systems? I'm gonna hold on. We're gonna do a couple hands.
Okay.
We're gonna no, go ahead. You keep going, and then next I'm gonna go with Lucas, and then sorry, one more time, Steven.
Yeah.
Steven.
I don't know if anyone else has split it, but the Isle is entirely
Mhm.
like emergent. There's some control where like if you want to catch fish, you have to go to the river. If you want like bushes, you gotta go to the plains or whatever. But it's basically like sounds so nerdy because it is. It's like a bunch of different dinosaurs, and you like start as a juvenile and you try to stay alive until you get to maximum growth, and then like you spawn players in as like little baby dinosaurs and they try to do the same thing. And it's actually genuinely quite hard because a lot of the like carnivorous dinosaurs you have to eat other players. There's AI, but they're kind of far in between. And so a lot of like fun, goofy stuff
Mhm.
can emerge out of just like playing with other players, and like you kind of have to have other players, otherwise there's nothing to do.
Yeah, I mean, just so many survival games, Rust, right? Really depends on here's a bunch of systems, go have fun with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's like an important thing is like, yeah, if you're ever making a survival game, it's only as good as the systems that actually exist within the game. So I think that's really important. But let's hear some other answers as well. Yeah, I don't want to get too far into my thoughts on survival games.
I really love Batman Arkham Knight. I know a lot of people don't, but it's probably my favorite in the whole series. Anyways, I just think like it's so much fun to be flying around the city and finding all these outposts and stuff. But it's not very open when you think of it like that, right? Because all these places are already they're already placed in the world, right? If I come back again, I can find them all in the exact same spots. But I guess there are some. I think the car chases are like moderately random events, so every once in a while you get into those kind of things, but they don't. I guess it's still mostly it's really there.
This is more like it's Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, everyone knows Tears of the Kingdom, but I found that the more linear scripted parts of that game were honestly really weak for me. Like, I still haven't beaten Tears of the Kingdom. I cannot motivate myself to play the story of that game. It just feels very samey to Breath of the Wild. I do, however, still have 1,000 hours in the game. As the open world parts, just 1,000 hours. I don't sleep. The open world parts it's super nice. You go around, there's something literally everywhere. Like finding a random, I think it's the Hobgoblin caves. Those are great, and I don't know where I'm going with this, but I really enjoyed the emergent parts of Tears of the Kingdom versus the linear parts.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could talk about Tears of the Kingdom for like hours and hours and days, right? But no, even if you look at like the temple design in Tears of the Kingdom, so there's elements of the story that were very like on rails, very linear, not super emergent, and that even actually scales between different dungeons. Some of them are more linear and on rails. Some of them just beg you to break them. And I think for me the standout was the Fire Temple, which just lets you use Ascend wherever you want, and you can just break it. And that one was so fun to me because it was all just, hey, here's the systems of the game. There's no specific way to do it. Sorry?
It really leaned into the creativity part of it versus the combat sim part of it. 'Cause
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Legend of Zelda isn't a combat sim. I really wish they would stop doing combat sim stuff with it.
Yeah, 100%. Sam, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's interesting, like the emergent versus constructed. It's kind of a spectrum, right? Because I think in an open world game, anything that is emergent just means that it feels so natural to the world and like it could happen, like rationally and reasonably anywhere. And like I'm thinking like Arkham Knight, I find a lot of the interactions you have in that game, they do kind of feel emergent, even though they're pretty scripted, because the world feels very, I'd say it feels very lived in our
Reactive.
Yes, it
Very good.
reacts to what you're doing. It feels real rather than just like
Mhm.
very isolated, distinct points of gameplay.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
if you look at like I know it seems like we're saying that like, systemic is the way to go really hard in your system to have an emergent gameplay, but like Elden Ring is not an emergent game. Elden Ring is very heavy on, more controlled content, where, here's your enemies, you usually fight them in a certain way. Now, there might be different ways for you to engage with them because the level design is really dynamic and allows you to do different things, but mostly there's like a controlled way for you to engage with the content within that game, and there's not really a lot of unexpected things that could happen that aren't written by someone or created by someone who worked on the game. So there are definitely examples of like, here's an amazing open world game, game of the year winner, definitely something that's going to super influence the industry, but it's not necessarily emergent. It really relies on fantastically well crafted, hand created content that makes the world feel really real and dangerous and reactive to the player. And so that's you look at Elden Ring, you look at Arkham Knight, that's what those games do so well, at least in my opinion. We are at 2:30. I want to move on to the next two terms within EcoTag. So that's going to be opaque versus transparent, OT. So an opaque open world, right, is a game like Tears of the Kingdom, is a game like Elden Ring, is a game. Those are the examples I have in my head. I'm not gonna be able to come up with the rest of them right now. But an opaque open world is one where you can't see everything right away, and so the game asks for you to explore and to discover things and to stumble upon them and to be like, oh, there's something in front of me. Let me go see what this is. Whereas a transparent game is something that a lot of people call the Ubisoft formula, where you go up to a tower, you press R3, and then a bunch of pins appear on your map, and there's like, hey, there's a bunch of content, you can go do it. And everything's transparent, it's right in front of you, and then there's just like activities for you to do. There's no surprises. You're not really, I don't know, I would say the discovery in a transparent game is not nearly as good, and not nearly as rewarding as a game that is opaque and asks you to be like, here's this gigantic world for you to explore. You see that mountain over there? You can climb it, right? What's at the top of that mountain? That's a question for you to ask. How do I get there? That's a question for you to ask, and you get to find the answer for that. What are some examples of some games? Oh, no, I talked about both. What are some examples of some opaque games? What are some examples of some transparent games? What do you guys enjoy about them? Let's just talk about it.
So that is something that I looked up as well before I came here, and the two biggest examples are A, Assassin's Creed for transparent games, and B, games like Skyrim for opaque games. Mm-hmm. Because in Assassin's Creed, you scan the map, you have all the collectibles, so you're still technically exploring the map, but you aren't exploring it for the sake of exploring. You're going from point A to point B to collect collectibles or gain artifacts or something that you already know what's going to happen. But then in a game like Skyrim, you still get those pointers, but they aren't on your map. They only show up on your compass and when you're close to the place that it has. So you still get some sort of direction when you're close to objects, so you aren't randomly going around hoping to find something, but it also encourages you to actually explore the world. Whereas, like I talked about earlier with Elden Ring, that is a completely opaque game because it doesn't give you, like, at least, like I've only played it for an hour or so, but at the time I played it, I was completely lost. I didn't know where to go. And so I think there's a sweet spot between being opaque and being transparent, which games like Skyrim have just absolutely nailed, which I think a lot of Bethesda games absolutely nailed that.
Yeah, actually, I totally forgot about Skyrim, but yeah, quest givers. I remember having a quest givers in open world games. Go to a town, here's some things for you to do, but it's in like a more organic way. Like I feel like if I play a game like, you know what, I'm never played it, but Horizon. This is just the impression that these games give me. That I go into a town and there's gonna be like a million, pins of people for me to go talk to for quests, and then I go complete the quests. And it just seems like I'm checking things off the list. But in Skyrim's like you walk into an inn and then you overhear a conversation of this guy, yelling at the innkeeper, being like, "If you don't give me the money in 3 days, I'm gonna come back and take your dog." I don't know. And then he walks out, and then you go up to the innkeeper, like, "What was that?" And they're like, "I don't know. They're just coming here to take all of my food and they want all my cheese." I don't like, but it's more organic rather than the transparent model, which is just like here's an activity for you to do, and it's like jingling keys in front of you, to me at least. And I don't know. I really don't like the transparent model. Opaque, that sort of sense of discovery is so important for me in open world games. So
I would point about the transparent games in general.
Yeah.
More so. Like you think Spider-Man, that's pretty transparent because you all the points on the map.
Yeah.
But moving from point A to point B is part of the game.
we're gonna get there. Don't worry.
We're gonna
We're gonna get there. Don't worry. There's a whole
Got it.
section. Yeah.
I think Just Cause 3's meta cheat is a really good example of transparent open world done really well, because you get to a play, like you do the linear tutorial,
Mhm.
they explain red is bad, kill everything red.
Yeah.
And you get
So
into the
funny.
big open,
Guys, red paint is evil, by the way. This is a sign of propaganda.
you get into the big open world, and there's hints everywhere.
Yeah.
And they just sort of let you go. Like, it does tell you where everything is and what you need to do.
Mhm.
But I don't give you any information about how they want you to do it or anything like that. So you go liberate towns, however you feel like. You get into the organic sort of firefights on your way there. I know you said we're getting to that, but
It's an interesting combination of a transparent world with a really systemic focus, right? Because Just Cause, some of the stuff I pulled off in Just Cause 3, just like grappling helicopters and swinging them to the ground, picking up tanks with my helicopter and flying away with, like, there's so many crazy things you can do with it. It's just Just Cause 3 is like a sandbox that is begging for you to go blow shit up in the most crazy ways possible, right? And it doesn't get in your way. It's like, we know why you're here. You want to blow shit up. You want to see some cool explosions. Here's all the coolest places to go see explosions. So I think, like, that's a really good example of a game that benefits from that transparent model because it relies on the systemic stuff and it's so singular in its focus on what it's trying to do. It's a really good example. I totally forgot about that.
I think that just adding on to Just Cause 3 for a second, it's because the focus of the game isn't entirely exploration. The focus is more finding cool places to blow things up. Which I think
Yeah. Blow shit up. Blow shit up is so fun, Just Cause. I really hope that franchise isn't dead, by the way, because apparently four.
Just Cause 4 sucks. Except one part. It's like the bomb. The like, what is it? The grapple bomb or whatever. They can like attach to things.
Yeah.
And like where you can pull things together. That was cool. I wish they put that in Just Cause 3. So
Yeah.
Was the pulling things? They're not in there?
That's in 3, but they don't blow up. When they,
the bomb.
They convert.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
There's a bomb.
anyone else have any examples of, we're talking about transparent, opaque?
I'm not sure if WoW constitutes transparent or opaque because you can just completely explore
Mhm.
and find random quests throughout the world, or you can follow the main quest line and kind of do it that way. And it does point you exactly where to go. So it kind of leans into both depending on what you want to be doing.
Which game?
World of Warcraft.
Never played an
Me
MMO.
neither.
No, I played Pirates of the Caribbean Online. It's the only MMO I've ever played. Played it in the browser. That shit was super fun, but I never had the membership, so I don't really know what the real game was like. I just had fun sailing. But yeah,
This is more of an example of a bad one, but Halo Infinite.
Yeah.
There's nothing new.
Yeah.
You go from point A to point B, like, yeah, sure, throwing a fusion clothes to people is fun.
Mhm.
It ends at that. There's
Yeah.
not much else you can do.
Yeah.
Unless you like break the game, but
Halo's such a weird example because Halo is a game that I would say is a good mix between controlled content and systemic content, just because Halo is a sandbox shooter. Enemies are really smart and reactive to a ton of different scenarios. So you can bring a scorpion into a place, or you can come in with mongooses. 4 players on mongooses, 2 on the back, 2 in the front, and just shooting guns. And the AI can respond to that. And the game gives you the freedom to be like, yeah, this is how you want to play, go for it. Which is really interesting. And that's why I think for me, Halo is so much fun. Even the single player is a game that's so infinitely replayable, is because there's so many different ways that you can tackle things. And the game is like begging for you to jam that warthog through the door into that place where it's not supposed to go and just try to finish the level that way. But yeah, like the open world of Halo Infinite was actually just not that interesting, just because it was a lot of filler. It wasn't particularly meaningful content.
it was a lot of like, in like the same locations, everyone looked the same. There's no distinct like places,
Yeah.
and you just kind of go and do the same thing over and over again.
There were like 2 military bases in that game that I was like, oh, this is really cool. One was the one that there's like chasm, or there's like the gateway, where there's like one side and there's another side. And if you're on one side, people are going to shoot you, but it's not really easy for you to shoot back because there's a bunch of snipers. That was like a really cool level. But, and honestly, it's probably something that's like super replayable if you do it in co-op or if you do it, a slightly different approach. But then beyond those 2 bases that I remember, I don't remember any of them because they were all just generic and uninteresting. Yeah. But yeah, I think Halo Infinite would have been a game that benefited from a more opaque world design, because I also think it would have benefited from sandbox levels instead of an open world. Like Metro Exodus is a good example of like not going full open world, but we're not here to talk about Halo Infinite as much as I wish we were. Sam.
Yeah, like I think this is one of the problems you get into with transparent open worlds sometimes. Like they do feel like just time wasters.
Mhm.
Like I've been playing Need for Speed Heat recently, and in the daytime, when you're going from race to race in the open world, it's just like this could have been a level select. Like I can fast travel from race to race, do the race. The open world doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
So it becomes one of those things where it's like, why is it there?
Yeah.
In Need for Speed, it justifies it because you, especially at night, you have really cool interactions with like the cops and managing your heat. But it can still be kind of like, I think that's an open world that works. It's just like this could have been a level select. It would have been just as good. But one other thing I think that's interesting in transparent versus opaque is I think it caters towards players who are completionists. I cannot imagine ever getting 100% completion in something like Tears of the Kingdom. But there are people who love playing 80 hours of God of War or Assassin's Creed just so they can get the platinum trophy, which would be a pretty awful experience, I think, if it was an opaque open world, you know?
Yeah, I think the way that I see it is that like opaque is you can ignore. You're only going to see the content that you really want to engage with.
Yeah.
And so as a result, you're going to be playing this game like Zelda, right? And Zelda does a good job of pointing you at all the different elements or like all the different pieces of content within the game through its quest system, through its like central hub. And it's like, hey, check out all this cool stuff that we have going on. But it never feels the same as like a transparent game where it's like, here's a million things for you to do. Do whatever you want now. And so because I think it's about discovery, it's about I chose to engage with this, and so I discovered this cool thing, and that it wasn't just like plastered all over the map, that it makes each piece of content that you do choose to engage with feel more meaningful. Whereas if you look at a game where it's just pins and pins and pins, choosing to complete a piece of content feels like checking something off a box. You're doing it because you need, I don't know, whatever the resource that you get rewarded with at the end, or maybe you're just doing it to complete everything and get that platinum, right? But I think when you have a opaque open world, it's about I chose to engage with this content and I got really rewarded for it because I discovered it. Versus transparent is just like here's a bunch of things for you to do. Go,
And I
a bunch
think
of shit.
opaques make the game feel much more tailored to you too.
Yeah.
Because everything that you choose to do
Mhm.
feels right.
Adds replayability as well.
Yeah.
You're gonna add something?
Yeah, I think we have to also make the distinction that between casual gamers and like gamers or hardcore gamers, all casual gamers would 99% of the times go for transparent games because they aren't playing to be completionists or they aren't playing to explore much. They're there to just they're back from work or back from school. They're there to play for like 40 minutes. So if it's a transparent world, they can look at what stuff excites them, go there, do that stuff, get out of the game. But if it's an opaque world, and I'm guessing most of us can't relate to it because all of us are like gamers rather than
Yeah.
people who play games. But with opaque games, I think a lot of casual gamers would just be very like overwhelmed by everything. They're like, oh, I just want to play this for 30 minutes, but apparently I need to travel for like 40 minutes just to get to some area. I don't want to do this. So I think transparent games, while we don't enjoy them as much, casual gamers, I have to imagine transparent games are probably their favorite type of open world games.
Yeah, opaque can be very daunting for a lot of people. You start Breath of the Wild. A lot of people, when Breath of the Wild first came out, they felt like I left the Great Plateau and now I'm directionless. I don't know where to go, and so they explored around the plateau. They got bored and then they hopped off. And that's like not an uncommon experience, right? So it's important to like measure your audience when you're making a game, right? Like we can talk about the games that we enjoy playing as much as we want, but the audience is also something that's important. And we aren't always the number one biggest audience that we're making our games for as much as we might want that to be the case. So are there elements that transparency would actually benefit your average gamer to be able to complete your game, to actually get through all the content that you worked so hard on building? Or is it an opportunity for you to, build things in a, more opaque way and really let players feel like they discovered maybe a specific part of your game.
See, but I think also the thing is that opaque games can give you a more linear, simplified, stripped down experience.
Mhm.
Because with a transparent game, you're being told this game has 300 missions or whatever.
Mhm.
It has 700 collectibles you need to collect. And for some people, that can be overwhelming. Whereas an opaque game that says there's some secrets that you discover,
Yeah.
when you discover those secrets, you're like, oh, I'm doing great. You know, and you won't even, it depends on the player, of course, but some players, they won't even think about, oh, there's all this content I'm potentially missing out on.
Yeah.
They're
Or
just
Korok,
thinking,
look at Korok seats, right? 1,000 Korok seats. Some people, for some reason, felt the need to collect them all.
Yeah.
Right? And not just even for the dads, they're like, well, I gotta do it for a reason, right? And so they turned the game transparent and they went and found a guide online that showed them where all the Korok seeds are. They went and collected them. And no one liked it. I don't think I know one person who was like, wow, collecting the Korok seeds was the most rewarding part of Breath of the Wild for me. I felt it's just the gigantic piece of shit that you get at the end. Literal reward you get for collecting Korok seeds is a big piece of shit. That piece of shit that they gave me was just, it was life changing. I'm always going to remember.
and if it was transparent,
Yeah.
it would feel so much more incentivized.
Exactly.
If it said, instead of saying you have 25 Korok seats,
Mhm.
if it said you have 25
Out of a
out
thousand.
of 1,000,
Yeah.
it's a completely different experience on how the developers are telling you to engage
Mhm.
with this system.
I always, like, if I saw Korok seed, I would grab it, right?
Yeah.
But I would grab it because it's there in front of me and I discovered it. I wouldn't grab it because I'm like, gotta get that number up, man. Gotta get that number up. Feels good, man, when I get that number up. So that's like a key distinction of like, yeah, where, because it's opaque, I'm grabbing it for me. I'm not grabbing it for the number. But if it was out of 1,000, then I would dread each Korok seed. I'd probably just avoid them, even though I'm, missing out on inventory slots.
I think Breath of the Wild did it super well because they catered to both people.
Mhm.
The opaque way of going out and figuring it out on your own. And when you open the map, bottom left corner, you have completion percent.
Mhm.
So that is specifically for those people who want to complete it. So they,
Yeah.
the Breath of the Wild was able to cater to that too.
It's also just like so out of the way. I've never once noticed there's a completion percent. Isn't that amazing? I
Yeah.
hate completing. I didn't finish most games, let alone complete them, right? But if there's a big, completion collectopedia in Breath of the Wild, I'd be like, I don't know if I'd finish it, but it was a good game. But yeah, I just complained about it.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything on opaque versus transparent? Any good examples of games you've played? What about Starfield? Who's played Starfield here?
I played it for like 30 minutes, but that's about it.
Okay. Not too much discussion. We probably won't have too much discussion on Starfield because most people haven't played it, but that's a game that's really weird in its sense of like exploration discovery, because the way the ship works in the game, right, is there's no fuel economy, and so there's nothing that really limits how far you can go within the world. And if everything is basically just a fast travel point away, the whole world becomes the same distance apart, maybe a couple seconds longer. So, the planet where you start is the same distance from the first planet you're expected to go to, compared to like the last planet of the game that has like some end game content. You can go there straight away if you want. And because of the way that Starfield kind of, delivers its world and kind of shows like, here's all these planets and you can go to whichever one you want. There's not really like an organic way to like discover these things. Just because, well, first of all, yeah, planets are like so incredibly huge. I don't know. There's not really an organic way to discover quests in Starfield other than like that Bethesda method that we talked about of like, here's a quest giver who tells you to go to X planet, but there's like no other reason for you to like stop at random planet. Who's going to Epsilon 6, right? Dude, I gotta stop at Epsilon 6. I've never once landed on Epsilon 6. I don't think I ever will, unless there's a quest giver who tells me to go there. And so it just becomes very, I don't know, it's a weird system. I don't know if it's opaque or it's transparent, but it's like almost overly opaque, and there's like only one reason to ever go to any location.
Are the planets procedural in Starfield
In a way.
in a way?
Yeah. Yeah. the planets are procedurally generated, all of them,
Oh,
and then they hand place content on the planets. For some of them just have randomized points of interest, but
like cities and stuff are
Yeah.
handcrafted and then they're placed on random.
no,
pre-generated.
cities are on pre-generated. Yeah, planets like Epsilon 6, right, are 100% random. They pre-generated everything, but like when you land on something, right? It's the same for everyone, but it is just like randomly generated. So okay, there's no life on Epsilon 6. It's a barren wasteland, but there's like a abandoned mining colony there, and you can go land near there. But yeah. Okay, cool. We are approaching the end of our time, so I'm going to reveal to you guys the last two parts of Eco Tag, and that is aesthetic versus gaming. And this has to do with traversal, one of the most important things in an open world game. How are you getting around? How are you exploring that world? Is it aesthetic, which is, made to emulate reality? So stuff like GTA is very aesthetic, but it just means like you're driving a car from point A to point B. It's not always the most interesting. Or is it gaming, which is an example like Spider-Man, which has game systems that you can engage with that are really interesting and that don't necessarily reflect any sort of reality, but there's like a skill ceiling for you to engage with, and you can kind of have fun with it and get better at it. Another great example of a gamey open world that some might think like at a surface level this is really aesthetic, but Dying Light is definitely gaming, right? Dying Light is an open world game about parkour. It's about pathfinding. It's about how am I going to get from here to here in the fastest time possible. And as you develop new skills, as you understand the game system better, you're going to be able to get from point A to point B way faster than you might have at the beginning. And so it makes you actually engage with the movement that you use to get around the map and get better at it and make it a part of the gameplay, rather than a game like GTA where sometimes it's just driving and like nothing is happening, and you just have these two characters yapping in your ears. I don't know, talking about you're a hippie or you're a, what are they called? Hipster. You're a hipster, Trevor. Great speech, right? But that's like an example of a game where the traversal, in my opinion, not particularly interesting. Do you have any examples of games with traversal that either really clicked with you or didn't click with you?
It's games like where you can travel on horseback. I haven't played RDR2 a lot. I've maybe played like 15 minutes, but I think it also has where you can just press a button and the horse takes you from point A to point B directly. And sure, that's like convenient because you can just press one button, and if it's like a 10-minute long journey, the horse will take you there directly. But what that does to a lot of gamers is they'll just press that button, let the horse take them to the destination, and they'll sit back and like scroll on TikTok or something.
What, the gameplay itself?
Exactly. But if that option isn't there, sure, some players may be like, oh, I have to go take the horse there by myself. But what that leads to is when you're actually taking the horse or riding the horse to point B yourself, you'll notice a lot of things around the map, and you'll be like, instead of going in a straight line as a pathfinding would have taken you, you're like, oh, there's a cool looking building there. So you'd go to the right and go to the building, and maybe in the building you'd see something else and you'd go off the path as well. So that just increases the time a player spends in your game, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
So it's games where you can just go from fast travel is one thing, but just allowing players to sit back and let the game do its thing, I don't think that's like the wisest decision.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Red Dead has some, things that make that traversal more interesting than just, auto playing. Sometimes you're going to run into the enemy gang, the O'Driscolls, right? And they're going to ambush you, which I've had some crazy ambushes happen in that game. The open world in that game is so good, but the campaign doesn't really do any of it, so it didn't click for me. But yeah, like traversal is super important. And yeah, in a game like Red Dead, there are really interesting systems that you can engage with. And sometimes it's just hold square, go into cinematic camera and scroll on TikTok, But yeah, let's talk about other examples of games with traversal that is really gamey, something you can engage with and get better at, or stuff that is just built to visually showcase how you move and justify, well, you don't have to fast travel everywhere, even though sometimes fast travel is just going to be the best way to get around.
I was just gonna build off Reddit. Like one thing I do like about the fact that you can go into cinematic mode and kind of let it go for you is like, if you're not scrolling, you can kind of just enjoy how beautiful the game looks. And also like, I can almost focus more on keeping an eye out for like people calling for me or whatever, like in the game, because random events will happen when you're transversing the map, rather than just focusing on like actual movement. I can kind of let the movement go and focus on other parts of the game. which I like.
I think horses are so interesting because horses are animals that are like, they can follow a trail on their own. You don't need to like command them constantly. It's not like you take the foot off the gas, the car stops, right?
In some games, but some games will be like, oh yeah, the horse can totally drive itself. And then you'll like let the horse follow the trail.
Yeah.
And then it'll like run into a tree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really annoying. And yeah, Zelda does
Zelda, I
that.
think is so bad.
Yeah.
that.
The Zelda horses have their own
Horses can
problems,
follow
right?
the road,
Yeah.
Definitely. And I'm like, no, they
Yeah. But yeah, like I think Red Dead, instead of just having an auto drive feature, right? Like Far Cry added, but instead of just having auto drive, like what if the horses could just like follow the trail and you don't have to hold the X button to keep telling them to move? They'll just understand they have to keep moving. And I think I don't know. I feel like that would be an opportunity to still have the player be like aware of like, hey, I need to make sure this horse stays on the trail. This horse is a little stupid, but. And like, okay, maybe you shouldn't run into trees. I think that's so dumb. But
Run into trees and break your neck or break your horse's
yeah, but I've never had my horse do it on its own. It's only been when I'm being stupid with my horse. Yeah, user error. But yeah, that's like a great example of horses are a really interesting traversal thing that I think some games just turn into cars. And I'm like, stop turning your horses into cars, dude. It's a horsepower, but it's a little different,
It
guys.
is a very complex system because it's like
Yeah.
they should kind of function like an AI with a brain, but you also want the player to have some control over them.
Yeah.
You know?
They had a point.
Oh, I was not talking about horses, but
Okay. Before does anyone else want to have a comment on horses though, real quick?
Just that I do like in Red Dead that initially it won't listen to you as well, but then as you like
Yeah.
bond with it more, it listens to you better. Same with Breath of the Wild and Truly Kingdom, which is kind of nice.
you brought up Dying Light
Yeah.
and how moving from point A to like the parkour aspect
Mhm.
and like moving your character and like games like Assassin's Creed do that.
Mhm.
Sea of Thieves is kind of similar.
Mhm.
If you consider the boat as the player.
Yeah.
Like there's all the stuff you can adjust the sail to catch wind, you can steer it, you can do this, you can drop anchor whenever you want, right? And I don't know, I just think Sea of Thieves is a good
I
example.
love Sea of Thieves, man. That's the thing with Sea of Thieves for me, right? Is that you can really engage with the boat and make sure you're getting there as fast as possible and like, oh, let's catch the wind and adjust sails and all that. But you can just chat with your friends while you're playing, and and then you're like, oh shit, drop anchor, and that's a lot of fun. Man, Sea of Thieves is a really, really good game. For that, just because you can choose to engage with it at a high level and be like, we're gonna run the most efficient ship and murder everyone in the sea. Or you can just be like a chill guy. It's like, oh shit, our boat sank. We lost all our treasure. All right, see you guys later. The thing with Sea of Thieves is that it doesn't have any kind of progression in the game. So all the treasure you get is just for the feeling of, oh dude, we got a bunch of treasure and we sold it. But if someone steals your treasure, like you don't actually lose out on anything other than that feeling. But yeah, so you can totally just like not give a shit and just play the game for shits and giggles, or you can be, a murderer on the high seas, and the game kind of allows for both of those. So yeah, in like a open world sense, like you can choose to really engage with that movement mechanic and get really in depth with it, but you can also kind of just like not care too much about it.
I think two of my favorite games not favorite games, but favorite games in those senses of both sides of the spectrum is Just Cause 3 for gaming and Cyberpunk for aesthetic. Because Just Cause 3, there's like the skill ceiling for that, like using all of your grapple, your wingsuit, your parachute is pretty high of how much like different combinations of ways you can do it to get either super fast or super high or across the map as much as possible. They even have leaderboards for it, I think, from how far you go. So I think that part is super fun to just like traverse the entire island. Even if you're not going anywhere, you're just like zooming across everything.
That's the thing, right? With like gaming movement, is that moving around the map itself is the enjoyable part of the game. It doesn't matter where you're going. It's not about the destination, guys. It's about the journey. It's 100% about the journey. So you can have so much fun. Just, I'm playing Spider-Man. I'm just going to, web sling around, and I'm just going to, play some music and not going to do any missions. And you can have a lot of fun with that, right? Or like Just Cause, I can just wingsuit across this whole city. I have the booster pack DLC, and I'm never going to touch the ground ever again. I'm having a ton of fun with that. And that's a really great way to play that game too. I've done that multiple times myself. But Did you get too into detail on like Cyberpunk?
So for
I
Cyberpunk,
might have just like not
my
registered it. So
I like barely touched the story.
Yeah.
As soon as I unlocked the whole map, I was like, okay, get in the car, drive.
Mhm.
Because the game just looks so, the actual world itself is so like beautiful
Mhm.
and all the different like areas that it's just, for me at least, it was fun to just drive around and, see all the different lights, pretty lights and RTX graphics.
Yeah.
Unreal 5.
it's not a real fight. Yeah, man, that game's production value. Every time I started replaying it recently, so I was like, let's see if they've made the game good yet. Because I did not like the game. But the production value on that game actually like just blows my mind. Every cutscene is so well lit, and the camera transitions and everything is like so well produced because it's all first person, right? But you can see your character getting into the chair. Every little thing you do has an animation. Absolutely insane. The fact that they even attempted it, it was crazy, and they almost died doing it. So that Noodle video, if you guys watch the video where he talked about the gaming industry makes games that are too big or whatever, makes a good point. That game did not need to be that big, but the fact that it exists is just insane to me. But yeah, Cyberpunk, it's just a pretty world. Sometimes you just want to enjoy it, and I think that's fine, right? If you just want to drive around. But I personally, for me, like the traversal in Cyberpunk, especially because the driving the cars, at least at launch, was not fun because they like didn't have a proper mini map and a bunch of other like problems. Sometimes your character would just T-pose while driving. So
like a year ago, so that's when it was
Yeah.
a lot better than launch.
Like I still haven't touched Cyberpunk. Is that at a point where if I play it right now, I would have fun with it? The last time
They
I heard,
just
might.
released a new update that
Yeah.
fixed like most things.
That's
to fix the systems, I still think the content itself has problems, but I think the core systems are a lot more interesting, so you can have a lot of fun with that. Yeah. Any other examples of aesthetic or gamey traversal that you guys are like, dude, it's crack,
Oh, crap.
crack?
Oh, crap. Okay, I was like,
Yeah.
WoW actually just introduced something that I forgot to bring up earlier. They've never really had a gaming movement system.
Mhm.
The movement system was honestly garbage before. Like,
Mhm.
no fast travel, nothing. You have to, like, if you want to go from point A to point B, you either have to have a mage friend who has a portal who will get you there, probably wants money from you, or you have to walk around the entire map, continent, multiple continents, and find these little fucking shoes that you like click a thing on, and then you can fly there. But every time you fly there, you have to go through the entire flight path. So you're not just like, ooh, fast travel.
Yeah.
Recently, they introduced dragon riding, which is actually pretty neat. And you can go around the map and like add stats to your dragon or whatever. And it makes it so that it's actually fun to go from point A to point B. And it's incredibly fast.
Mhm.
And it's like, depending, because the physics system is actually kind of whack. Depending on how well you like hone your skill level, you can fly farther distances and keep your stamina up by like, if you dive downwards, it increases your stamina. And if you try to go up, you have to use stamina to go up.
Yeah.
And it makes it really genuinely fun.
It's like Batman. So
Never
fun.
played it, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's the like you can if you actually pay attention to the traversal in Batman, you can do a lot more than if you just like held A and went in a straight line.
Yeah.
Also, that kind of reminded me, GTA Online destroyed its traversal completely when they introduced those flying bikes. It was actually an insane decision. Obviously, flying bike, oh, I'll pay $5 for that, and they made a shit ton of money, no doubt, right? But the traversal in GTA Online, once you get that bike, is you fly up high in the sky, and then you go in a straight line exactly where you want to. You just hold the right trigger, and there's nothing else.
Can it just take off from anywhere?
You can take off from anywhere, right? You go up in the air in a straight line, and then you fly directly to your objective, and you go down. And it's like, okay, at least driving had like, okay, I can drift, I can take corners. You know, the driving gameplay is a little bit fun.
You can hit pedestrians.
You hit pedestrians, you can get cops called on you. There's just nothing with the new traversal. I mean, I honestly think the only reason they put it in the game is because, oh, dude, flying bike, dude, $5, yeah, hell yeah, right? But I got a hacker to hack me a bunch of money, and then I, bought the bike with it.
He says
And it-
recorded. He says on record.
What do you mean? This is not being uploaded anywhere. We will edit that out. Edit that out. But that was just like a moment where I was like playing the game, and I'm like, I'm not like having any fun. I know GTA Online is like not fun, but I'm not having like any fun at all.
Yeah.
What happened? It just drained all the fun out of the game.
It's weird to think that a method of traversal
Mhm.
can be like overpowered,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think Batman. I love Batman's traversal.
Yeah.
I think the Batmobile did a good job.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I think
It
it's also a good.
It's like this ultimate power fantasy car
Mhm.
where you can like drive through any wall, you can run over anything except for trees for some reason. I don't know why trees are indestructible.
Poison ivies.
But you can, like-
show poison
Yeah,
ivies.
yeah.
Not gonna be.
But like you can just drive through buildings and
Yeah.
they'll just crumble because it's like the ultimate power fantasy car.
Yep.
It's so fast. It's very maneuverable.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if you want to go fast, take the Batmobile.
But at the same time, the Batmobile doesn't get you exactly where you want to go.
No.
It gets you most of the way there. You still have to engage with the regular, flight, grapple boost, all those
Dive
mechanics,
bomb.
dive bomb to get to where you actually want to go. It's gonna take you most of the way there, and then you, as Batman, get exactly where you want to go. And so it mixes those together, but it doesn't overpower one of them. And I'm like, they figured it out with that one, man. That was a great traversal system. The only issue is the bat tank shit that they dumped in the game for some reason, and
Yeah.
the over reliance of like, oh dude, the Riddler made a racetrack in the sewers. Batman, you have to do all the racetracks to free. Who the hell thought of that as a narrative justification? But like it could have just been like, oh Alfred, hey, I made a VR racetrack for you to practice your precision drive. What a way better. Oh, the Riddler is made a bunch of racetracks. But yeah, no, that like Arkham. Honestly, I have a lot of problems with Arkham Knight, but I think the traversal in that game was, you go from Asylum to City to Arkham Knight. The traversal was really good, and whoever was in charge of that design. Yeah. All right, we're reaching the end of our time here. We have a couple more minutes, but is there any other points that anyone wants to talk about? Right.
I think Elite Dangerous is a really good,
Mhm.
like, it's weird because it's almost both like aesthetic and gaming, where it's like the core gameplay is like flying around in your ship. You don't really do much else, but it's also like there's not a lot of systems around it other than just like controlling how you move, right? And especially when you're in like that fast travel. Well, it's not fast travel, but like you're moving really fast.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called. It's like
Which time I think in the league,
yeah, I can't remember.
or which space?
You
But yeah.
move through space.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
moving fast through space, right? And so like there are some mechanics, right? Like you can't fly too close to a star, otherwise you'll explode.
Mhm.
I think is there a fuel system? I don't remember.
Yeah, there's a fuel
I
system,
think
but
there
you
is,
can
but
get
it's
like
never a problem for me.
you can get like an auto harvester as well. I don't know, man. Elite Dangerous had so many mechanics that I was like, why didn't Starfield have this? Could have made it interesting, because I think Elite still does have interesting traversal that made the game like, oh, you want to go somewhere far away. It's an actual journey to get there, and it's actually difficult. Whereas Starfield, because everything is, there's no fuel system in the game in Starfield. The only thing that you're limited by is the jump distance that you can make based on your ship, but then you can jump to a system and then just jump to the next system. And so it's just like, okay, how many times do you want to hit the fast travel button? That's really the only limitation in Starfield. And I don't know, man. It's just it's insane to me that they managed to build a system that really has like not a lot of interesting, consequences attached to it, other than everything is now the same distance apart. You can go to any city you want, and there's nothing really restricting you in terms of like proximity. Like in Skyrim, you start Whiterun is right there, right, and that's probably going to be the first city you go to. If you want to go to a different city, you can, but there's a general, introduction to the world just based off of where you start. You start at this point of the map in Helgen. The closest city is Whiterun. That's the primary hub of the game. And then you can go west to Markarth. You can go northwest to Solitude, Winterhold, Grifton, all these key points in the world. They're all in different directions. So you have, equal choice in which one you want to go towards. But Starfield just kind of has none of that. And I don't know. I feel like there's ways that they could have introduced that. And I'm excited to see how the modding scene handles that. But yeah, Elite is a game that I wish they took a little bit more inspiration from. Yeah. All right, guys, 2 minutes left. Let's just cover one more time Eco Tag. Emergent. Had a thing there. Emergent versus Controlled, right? It's games where it's a systems-driven content system where a lot of different systems can interact with each other to create interesting scenarios, and it really rewards the player for their creativity. Versus Controlled, which is going to provide more handcrafted content and can sometimes deliver that at a higher quality than an emergent system can. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be better than or deliver a better experience than an emergent system. We also have opaque versus transparent. This helps players discover the world. Transparent is a system that tells the player exactly what content is available, and it directs them to whatever it is that they choose to engage with. Whereas discovery is a more personal experience. It's about exploration and about wonder. I mean, there's so many examples of like moments where you discover something in a game like an Elden Ring or Tears of the Kingdom, and it just completely blows you away. But I don't want to get into spoilers because there's some really amazing moments in those games. And the last one is traversal, right? Is it aesthetic or is it gamey? Is it more focused on capturing realism, or is it something that players can master and get rewarded for and have fun just moving around the world? And I think those are all principles that if you are interested in open world games, look at what appeals to you and look at how you can take elements of those games and apply them to your own games. I don't know if anyone's going to make an open world game for GDW, but understanding these things might actually help you. I don't know. It's something you might be able to put into your portfolio somehow, and maybe that'll help you find a job, because there's a lot of studios making AAA open world games right now, and it's a good idea to pay attention to what some of the most popular and some of the best games are doing and how you can apply that to your work. That is it for today. Next week, we're going to have a new session. We're still currently confirming what it is, but keep an ear out and hopefully we have some fun with it. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I'll hopefully see you next week. Take care. Bye. End call for everyone.
The call is being recorded.
Yeah, but do you have to end the recording first? Probably. All right. Manage recording.
No, I gotta take it to the GDS.
Okay, bye people who are in the chat, Michael and Gareth.